G. All right, President Joyce, we're all set.
Alrighty, so we will now conclude our lively discussion and review of proposed drug compounding rules with staff member Efremov.
So I'm gonna have to go back and turn it up.
Thank you, Staff Member Efremov. For everyone on the call, this is mailing G again. G. We're just going to get one moment to pull up those rules so that everyone can see as we go along. Share with the public.
Where'd we leave off? Oh, first rule, yes. Okay, hold on.
So we're going to pick up at 855-183-0050 personnel.
Share to 050. Okay, hold on just a second.
Yep.
All right, there you go.
All right, perfect. We have this shared with the public now at this time. So for this section, staff's assessment is that we do not need to add this explicitly. Per board direction, it is incorporated within USP. There is nothing necessarily that needs to be called out related to personnel parameters. It's covered in USP 795 and 797 Section 2, personnel training and evaluation, and USP 800. Section 9 for personal training regarding for paren C, directions for self-inspection process. We propose to move that to the general section. So we would propose to strike this whole section and move the one piece that we believe still needs to be kept into a different location. So I would just open it up now if there's any questions or discussion for this set. All right, we will move down to the next section. So the general section where the bulk of the requirements are going to be kept. This section articulates the fundamental basic requirement that all compounding must be compliant with USP. So as you can see here, we've updated to the correct versioning and removed any other references to other chapters. So we've taken a more simplistic version of this. Because we know that if in 795 it requires you to follow chapter 7, that still would be encompassed with following 795. So there's no need for us to over articulate that. So this time we would also propose to strike what was old paren 2 and old paren 3. Those were both not requirements in USP. They were put in place to encourage entities that work towards using technology to enhance accuracy of dispensing and increase patient safety. If the board would like, we could discuss an option to create a board memo or communication to officially communicate with licensees the board's expectations to continue to strive to leverage technology to enhance patient safety. It's my understanding in discussing this with other compounders that really good quality experts that are compounding use these methods already for the most part. So at this time, staff is proposing to strike those sections. Moving on to the new paren 2, you'll see in blue. So this is just relocating and slightly reworking for clarity the requirement to complete the self-inspection form in alignment with the other divisions. New paren 3 replaces the need for a record section. So 855-183-0550, we're proposing to strike that later, you will see, and calls out the requirement to be in compliance with Division 104 for record keeping, as USP states only 2 years. Our rules require 3 years. Also, it's important to note that we would be following Division 41 related to other records requiring dispensing processes. So 855-41-1040 paren 2G, there is the requirement to document all steps in the dispensing process. And there's also requirements of Division 43 that would have to be kept related to that so that everything is all encompassed, hopefully. And that's why staff believes that this could be more simplistic. Paren 4 replaces the language section that was struck through in personnel policy and procedures, paren 7, master formulation and compounding records section. So there are additional additional rule sets below that we propose to strike in their entirety. And what we've done is tried to pull up and incorporate here in a one-stop shop all of those different iterations. So really, we're trying to ensure that licensees, it's clear for them to know what their role is and making sure that that is in compliance with Oregon laws because USP can't necessarily speak to scope of practice. So that's what paren 4 is getting at. Paren 5. So paren 5 is just to clarify what should be clear but may not be. All state federal laws and rules must be followed. So it's important to remind everyone that the removal of the section that had related to FDA, that those requirements are still going to be in place. So we wanted to make sure that it's clear that everyone who's aware of these regulations, who are compounding, that of course you have to follow all of the FDA regulations. For example, when it talks about essential copies, you really should be identifying 21 USC 35353A and what is required or not. That's not going to explicitly be in USP. That's not going to explicitly be in our rules. So all state and federal laws and rules would have to be followed. So adding that piece to remind for clarity.
Do we need to look at your comment?
Nope.
Over here.
So we're going to pause. We're not going to do the policy discussion yet. I think it'd be easiest if we just want to do this section first, and then we'll move into the policy section. Probably easiest to do a round robin at this point. And I do apologize. I can't remember who we left off with. I think it's Board Member Patel.
Chen was next, no? Board Member Chen?
Oh, Board Member Chin, do you want to go first?
No.
Pass for now. Board Member Pinedo? So we're just doing up to paren 1 through paren 5.
Nothing to add.
Okay. Board Member Hall?
Nothing to add up to 5.
Board President Joyce?
Board President Joyce, so in terms of the language, as far as like using technology, gravimetrics, cameras, and scanning technology, that's eliminated here. Is that accurate? And then we're just saying refer to USP standards, essentially. So no more discussion of may and must use technology to perform sterile compounding, et cetera. Is that what we're saying?
Staff Member Effermouth, as written, the proposal would be such that you would have to comply with all USP requirements, whether you're using technology or not.
And so we've eliminated that discussion on may or must regarding the use of technology. You're just basing it basically on what USP standards are. We're deferring to USP standards.
My understanding was from past board meeting discussion that it was turned into a may, and then the may didn't need to be in rule, and that you were looking to be in requirement with USP. And if you're going to be stricter than that, to have a compelling reason why. So that's where we landed is this. But if you would like to provide other recommendations or suggestions, staff is happy to make those amendments.
Yeah, I don't know how to necessarily address that, or I don't know how I feel about that at this juncture. We'll be discussing it again in February, but I do want to just state that the use of scanning technology and camera technology in IV rooms has dramatically increased public safety. There's studies out there that have shown a 30 to 70% improvement in accuracy, and when you have technology that tells a technician that you're using the wrong drug to inject into someone, and there are health systems that are taking advantage of that technology. It's been shown that there's dramatic, improvement in patient safety. So I'm a proponent of the use of technology. Having used the technology myself, and when mixing hazardous medications, it's essential that technology is being used. Otherwise, we're essentially reverting back to a time when we had it's just I don't know. I'll have to look at this, dig deeper into this. I understand we don't want to be a burden or burdensome. We don't want our rules to be burdensome, and we want simplicity and conciseness and clarity in our rules. But there's some things, such as technology, that we should be taking advantage of when it comes to improving patient safety. Thank you.
Member Kirkbride?
Yeah, I don't have any edits regarding parent 1 through 5. Regarding the conversation about technology, I support the removal of that language. I 100% support use of technology. But I think it's problematic to have that in rule language due to the slowness that we update rules and the quickness of evolution in technology. And I think it very quickly can become outdated. So I don't think it's necessary to have the language in rule. I think it becomes very complicated to describe what kind of technology we require. And so to me, simply holding people to the standard that they have to meet, regardless of how they get there, is fine by me. So that's my opinion on the technology piece.
Thank you. Board Member Smith?
Board Member Smith, I support the simplification of these. I think it's great to just reference USP and not burden our licensees with additional stuff. So this looks great. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Patel?
Board Member Patel, I'm just need a little bit clarification. So I agree with number 2, right? Like we have the compounding self-inspection form. But then on number 4, it says that prescribing and dispensing privilege with the dispensing practitioner drug outlet, CF and CSA. So do they also have to follow our compounding self-inspection form?
Yeah, Staff Member Efremov, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't do a great job of highlighting that before. So in moving to 183, we're looking to have this relate to all of practitioner dispensing. So that's in the dip dose, potentially in a CHC or a CF. We want the same standard to be applicable for all of those settings. So we wanted to make sure that we accounted for in those settings that the prescriber with the dispensing privileges is the one that is overseeing, supervising, and verifying. So that's why we couldn't get better language that wasn't so wordy, unfortunately. But they do have to have dispensing privileges to be a prescriber overseeing the dip dose. So that's kind of where we had to land in that language.
Okay, no, that's totally fine. I was just want to make sure that, because, sometimes if you are in a different board, right, like prescribing, like Board of Medicine, Board of Nursing, sometimes you don't look in the what's Board of Pharmacy self-inspection form is. I mean, you should, right? I'm not saying like, that's okay. What I'm trying to say that we have to make sure that they understand that if we want to do compound, then they also have to follow that our compounding self-inspection form. So yeah, if that piece is somewhere else, totally fine. I don't have anything addition, but that one, where we landed on veterinarian then, do they have to follow the same as our compounding self-inspection form, or they don't have to follow?
Staff Member Efremov, so the vet board came back, I can't remember what the last time, they came back last year and got an extension to their waiver to exempt them from having to have DIPDO registration. So there was a caveat in the DIPDO rules that if they could meet the standards of our inspection process, they could be waived from having to have their licensees register with us as DIPDO. So currently we do not regulate veterinarian dispensing outlets.
Is that waiver is going to end sometime near, or?
Staff Member Efremov, we'd have to check. I'm pretty sure it's at least 2 more years, maybe more. They might have got re-upped for 5 last time when we met.
Oh.
It was June of something. Rachel's looking it up. June of 2024 is when they last came. Rachel's looking at it. Just 1 sec. We can tell you. Okay. They approved for 5.
3 years.
3 years. So 3 years. 2027, it will be coming back for the board to re-review.
Oh, perfect. So then it will be much easier for the board staff too, that everyone has to follow the same standards. So no, I do not have any additional comments. Thank you. Doing a great job. Thanks.
Board Member Patel, Board Member Kroger?
No additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Board Member Chin, did you want to
additional.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you for that. I think we have what we need. So we are going to move on then to the next section, which is number 6, I think 5.
6. You just
Perfect, thank you. So this is the first policy discussion. So we are asking the board at this time to assess back to accreditation or accredited inspections. There is some slight tweaking in the language here, so I'm just going to read the language. Beginning whatever date you choose, a drug outlet that prepares compounded sterile products from non-sterile ingredients must comply with the following. So again, this was presented as the work group approved accreditation for non-sterile to sterile as a recommendation, but we wanted to ask the broader discussion of should all compounders receive an accredited inspection, or should it only be sterile compounders, and or should it only be out of state, because we're really looking to make sure that everyone is compounding the same standard for Oregonians who receive their drugs. So making sure that we are assessing if another state does not have requirements with USP, that the patients in Oregon that are receiving prescriptions from a registered outlet that are compounded would meet that standard. So the language here reads, will comply with the following: be accredited or certified for sterile compounding by, so we have ACHC. Scroll down, I'm just going to shorten it. This is CCE. So we have another one that was recommended by our SME that does meet the criteria that is similar to the other national standard ones. NABP, Joint Commission. And we also added an E, otherwise is approved by the board. We thought it was important to ensure that the board has the opportunity that if other accrediting or inspecting bodies would like to present to the board that they are meeting a certain criteria, that you could easily add them. So we thought there's a lot of conversation that probably needs to happen here, but if the board does want to engage in this, we can figure out a process to make this happen that is hopefully not burdensome. The other component of this would be the requirement to provide evidence of that. And we thought in looking at Washington and Michigan's, it was every 2 year upon renewal that they had to have that re-provided. So we added language to clarify providing that evidence of accreditation or certification at the time of initial application for licensure and on subsequent renewal applications. So we could talk more about that too. But I did want to pause for 1 second because I really think it's important for our SME, Natalie Gustafson, to provide a little bit of input and thought about this process behind. She knows a lot about accreditation. She has a ton of experience in this area. So Natalie, if you're with us, would love if you could just kind of share your thoughts on this policy discussion.
For sure. Can you hear me okay?
Ah, beautiful. Yes,
Yes.
we hear you great.
Yeah, so a big reason why this came up in the work group was the big benefit of having a third-party inspection or accreditation is it's a much more in-depth process than the board is able to do in a normal inspection, right? Like when your board inspector comes out, not only are they looking at your compounding piece, but they also have to inspect you on any general pharmacy rules, right? So even if it's a full day inspection, they're still split with their time. Whereas when you're accredited, you or certified or inspected by a third party like that, they're very in-depth because they're there for more than 1 day. They're usually at least 2 days. And they are able to take that time to really go in, and they're in the labs with you. They're, watching what the compounders are doing. They're looking at, every policy. They're, the questions are very in-depth. They're really picking apart like the different pieces of USP. And when they're there, all of them are basically performing a gap analysis. And then if you are within that, then you're accredited, or if you have areas of correction, you need to make that, and then you can be accredited. So it's just very detailed in the way that they do it. And it's interesting because I've had now more than one, because I've been PCAB accredited. And then because of Washington not accepting that, I've also had Gates Healthcare come out. And it's just, they're literally asking you hundreds of questions, right? It's very thorough. You have to submit all your documents to them ahead. So they're looking at like all of your SOPs, your EM data, the environmental data, all that different stuff. They're looking at your certification reports, which can be hundreds of pages long, and they're able to review all of that ahead before they come out. And so it's really, really in depth with all that. These certifiers also typically are very aware of what FDA is looking for as well. And so they're always able to provide you information on like, hey, this might be okay for USP and your state, but this might be an issue, you know, if it came out for FDA, that sort of thing. So they're very thorough. And I think it helps hold you to a bit of a higher standard, right? Because you're still inspected by your board as well, but you also have these inspections. So it's all of it, right? So it's just a higher level. The real question comes down to, you know, if this is something the board's open to, who do you want it to be for, right? Would it be your highest risk, which is the non-sterile to sterile only? Would you include anyone who does sterile? Would you do people who only do non-sterile? Are you thinking in-state, out-of-state? You know, there's a lot of nuance to it for sure. And I can see arguments in both ways. One of the things that happens though, when you are inspected for sterile, you typically are also inspected for your non-sterile. And so it's kind of a higher, stricter standard for that too. And so it's more just from a patient safety standpoint, you know, are they going to get the same product from every single pharmacy? You know, has the facility been inspected to that level, the PPE, all the safety pieces, the HAZ piece, all of that. So that's kind of the basis of this. And then it really kind of depends on where you want to go with it and what kind of questions you have.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I think it might be good just to open up for board members. If you have questions for Natalie, it might be worth doing that before we do a round robin talking. Does anyone have any specific questions?
I don't know if this is a board member Kroger. I don't know if this is a question for Natalie or for you, for Washington State. Are they requiring accreditation for in-state pharmacies for compounding?
This is
Natalie. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, this is me, Gustafson. So they are not for in-state. They are inspecting to USP. These are for all out-of-state pharmacies. And they only approve NABP and Gates. Those are the only two you're allowed to use.
I think I'm not fully aware that Washington is requiring it for all states accreditation. They're requiring it for states that don't have currently on the books the same like USP. Oregon happens to be one of them, but I want to say it's only like 10 or 16 states that they require.
Staff member Aftermath, that is my understanding too. It is, at least from the list when I looked at it a few days ago, is that so you could look, Oregon is not on their list of states that they will accept an inspection from because we do not currently require compliance with USP. So you would have to, if you live in a state that doesn't require the standards of their regulations, you would be required to have their approved, which seems a little more narrow than what we have talked about in the work group, options to be able to get an accredited inspection. So that is something for the board to consider also, understanding staff resources and time also with that. But if Washington's beautifully doing this for us too, I do think that the future appears to be that most states are moving towards USP. This might be a temporary, what it seems like for Washington, it's, you know, I'm wondering if they're helping too, that this is only a temporary fix until everyone adopts USP to ensure that you are getting the same standard of drug. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Smee Gustafson?
Yeah, my only note is they only meet periodically to update that list for Washington. So even if we adopt full USP, it may be that we are still required to do this for another cycle. It kind of depends on timing, is my understanding.
Yeah. Are there questions?
Yeah, there's board member Patel. I don't know if you see my hand, but anyway. So board member Patel, question for Natalie. So Natalie, so do you have compounding pharmacy who provide, I assume, sterile and non-sterile compound, both?
Yes.
In state and out of state?
Yes.
And how many states do you guys do out of state compounding for out of state patients?
We're pretty narrow. We have 3 other states that we do outside of Oregon.
3 other states. And roughly how many compounds do you guys do per day?
Pretty decent amount. We're usually in the like 250s.
All right. So The thing is like with me is like I'm all for it out of state compounding pharmacy. Sure, we have accreditation because our inspector, they don't go out of state and inspect those pharmacy, and I always raise the concern for that. But here is the thing. So how many regulation we have? Like we have, of course, Board of Pharmacy, they do regulate, they see overseas in-state compounding pharmacy. We, of course, we also have the FDA, they also look, regulate, they can. We also have now USP standard, right? We have to follow that. Now, how many other standards we want to add on the top of all the regulation to the point we have no pharmacies, compounding pharmacy left in the Oregon. I understand that there should be a standard, but that is the standard. Board of Pharmacy, FDA, USP, and all other accreditation body. They're like they also charge you, right? Like how much, if you don't mind, how much do you pay for your each certification, Natalie?
Sure. Yeah, so PCAB is probably the highest of all of them. If you're doing non-sterile sterile and sterile, it's 18,500 for 3 years.
Very,
Gates and NABP are both around 6,000. So there is a cost to it for sure. And before the new USP, there was definitely a big gap between the standards we had to meet because they basically made those standards based on the new USP. But now with new USP, there isn't really a different set of standards, if that makes sense. Like I totally
yeah.
see what you're saying with that for sure.
Yeah, and again, not to forget, this is just like you're spending 8,000, 18,000 per 3 years or 6,000 per year or 2 year. Not only that, they have different requirement of their standards. So maybe USP just say like, hey, you don't have to use this kind of technology, XYZ technology. But they say, no, you have to use this kind of technology. That means you have to train your staff, right? Then you have to update on that one. You have to buy those technology. And I'm pretty sure those subscription ain't cheap either. So my point is, yeah, you are doing 250, 300 compound per day and you are doing out of state. Sure, you can justify that, right? But in-state pharmacy, who is something doing like 8 or 9 or 10 compound to serve their community, how can they justify? And not only just the compounding pharmacy I'm talking about the hospital. The hospital, they're like super small, like maybe 2 or 3 patient room hospital. How can they justify this one cost? And um and that's what, like, I do understand, I do absolutely understand the patient safety. But to me, doing other accreditation on the top of 3 regulatory body, I feel like it's like overkill. Out of state, sure, we can make a mandatory because our inspectors are not inspecting those out of state pharmacy, and I think our inspector, they are doing good job. So by saying that like they do in 4 hour inspection, that's not sufficient. I think that's the relative, right? Like it's relatively you're comparing to what, you know. So that's what I will rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Patel. I think it might be good at this time to also delineate between, I think there were 2 questions of requiring to have accreditation versus requiring having an approved or accredited inspection, which is a little bit different, right, than paying for accreditation. It's paying for an inspection. And secondarily, for the sake of time, since it appears that this will likely come back in February, we maybe don't need to get into all the details of the language of the rule at this time. If I could just get the direction of where the board would like to go as a majority, we could then change these rules to be in alignment with that. And I believe it's Board Member Pinedo who's up first. Because Kat skipped last time, so you get to go first twice. It's technically yours.
So lucky. I think there should be stricter policies on out of state compounding facilities, just because we have seen a lot of things where things are not done properly, and we don't have in-state or out-of-state inspectors. So we're basically just relying on the fact that that out-of-state compounding facility is following any rules, right? Like we really don't know what they are or not because they give us the bare minimum. So I do think that we don't want to add any more burdens or requirements that are more strict or make it harder for our licensees and our pharmacies to function and to work and to provide medications that our Oregonians need. Like, we don't want to add any more barriers. So whatever helps that process happen, I would like to see that happen. But I also would like to see something a little bit more stricter on other states that ship into Oregon, because again, we don't know what they're doing. We're just going off of reports that we get or things that come trickling in from who knows how or why. So I wouldn't burden our licensees and our independents and our non-for-profits with any more steps that they already need at this point. So yes, for the out-of-state compounding to be able to have these accreditations and certifications and anything else that we need, I wouldn't add any more to our own local.
And just one clarifying point, from staff, I think I hear you saying that it's holding out of state the same standard we hold in states. We're not doing additional requirements on them if they meet what the state standards in an approved inspection would be. But if they're not going to meet that, then we would make sure that we have inspections or accreditation or something related to the out of states that are shipping in. So we know that they're the same standard as ours. I just want to make sure that we're not like holding other people to a higher standard. It's trying to make it the same standard, to clarify that, if that's what you mean. Okay, thank you. Board Member Hall?
Member Hall, I echo what's already been said. Was there a second thing that you wanted us to address? Besides, I thought you mentioned something else, but yeah, I think at this point it would just be out of state.
I think that was it. Thank you, Board Member Hall. Board President Joyce.
Board President Joyce, yeah, out of state should meet in-state standards, at the very least. And a quick question here regarding, the list of, accrediting, groups. So are we requiring all of them, or are we saying one or the other? The language says all, right?
It's an or. If you look at the D, there's an or
D,
after.
oh,
Sorry.
down to D.
Yep, down to, sorry, printing
Gotcha,
it
I
out
was
where the other
seeing
ones
that
are.
on my screen. Okay, thank you.
Vice President Kirkbride.
I am not in favor of accreditation for in-state. While I agree it is a gold standard, it doesn't sound like it is common among the states. Still fairly limited as far as required. And I feel like Oregon requiring that for in-state would be excessive at this time until it becomes more of a standard across many states. I'd have to think more about the out of state. So I work for an organization that serves patients in both Oregon and Washington, and I'm very familiar with being subject to that Washington rule, and I can say that it is cost prohibitive. And it has been a cost burden to have that rule put upon an organization by Washington to an Oregon pharmacy. So if you can apply that to another out-of-state pharmacy, it could potentially be burdensome. Not that there aren't, situations where it could be helpful, absolutely. But I'd have to really think about whether or not ultimately that would be an overall benefit. And I think it would be important to make sure we are not holding out-of-state pharmacies to a higher standard than our in-state pharmacies. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Board Member Smith?
Board Member Smith. I kind of agree with the sentiment. Like, we don't have out-of-state inspectors. So I kind of think that might be a good requirement for the out-of-state pharmacies, is to have the accreditation. I also feel like, and maybe Natalie can clarify this more. I feel like there are a lot of compounding pharmacies that go and get accreditation. Is that correct?
Yeah, once you hit a certain size, we certainly have quite a few in state that have, like, mostly because the ones they all ship out of state, and so they need it for the other states. So yeah, quite a few have it now, for sure. Who like, but larger, right? Like the larger and usually like the non-sterile to sterile. You know, not typically someone who's doing non-sterile in state only.
And I think if it's like a small, like in-state pharmacy that we can inspect, you know, like we inspect our other places, I don't really know if that's necessary. But I think if it is a, you know, if we are, for our out-of-state pharmacies that are bringing stuff into Oregon, I think they should have to, I think that's a good way of holding them to a standard, without us having to expend resources, as a state board to go inspect them. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Patel?
For Member Patel, and I'm just going to add a little bit more. I hear that, I'm always about consistency and having a fair and equity and everything, but we are not holding out of state at higher standard. We are saying that we need that accreditation because our inspectors are not going into out of state and inspecting those pharmacies. If our the only way it can be a fair and consistency, and if you just say like we are holding both in state and out state compounding pharmacy same accountability, if inspectors, the Oregon inspectors, are inspecting out of state compounding pharmacy with our compounding self inspection form, then yes, we are holding everyone at the same standard. But right now, we are only holding in-state compounding pharmacy more stricter than out of state. That's what my opinion is. And to be honest with you, I don't have too much concern about the in-state compounding pharmacy than the out-of-state and the online compounding pharmacy. Like, you have no idea how many patients they come to pharmacy and they look for bacteriostatic injection just to so they can buy online or out of state uh, the XYZ a compound, and especially I would say the GLP-1, and which is a medical or chemical grade to inject themselves. So I have more concern about out of state and online compounding pharmacy than actually in state compounding pharmacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger, I think in general, however we can validate that someone is meeting the standards within our rule, holding them to the USP standards, whether that's through accreditation or an inspection from their home state pharmacy, I would find that sufficient. And I think Washington has gone through that exercise of reviewing that. So who knows if they've shared their homework. That's kind of how I would be comfortable with kind of the either or. And I think you articulated that pretty well. Kind of, you had a little statement about accreditation or this to be sufficient. And then, in-state could be held to the same, hey, if you've got an accreditation or upon inspection from our inspectors, and that gives you the go ahead for that. So.
Thank you. Board Member Chin?
More of a question. When a company is so big that they and they need to, because of other states, have this national accreditation, does that mean that we're not inspecting those compounding pharmacies because they are accredited?
Staff Member Efremov, we're currently inspecting all pharmacies, so we do also have a requirement in law to inspect regularly pharmacies.
And do we have so I don't know what a great big compounding sterile pharmacy would look like that's shipping all over the United States. I don't know if we even have that in our state, but is that something that our board staff have the bandwidth to inspect to that degree? Because they were talking about how those people are more specialized and have all these extra trainings and things. So I'm just curious, just hearing all that.
Yeah, Staff Member Efremov, I think Smee Gustafson did a really great job of kind of teeing up when you're an expert in something to become a sterile compounder, you have to do a lot of work to learn and understand that specialized service you're providing. And that does reflect also then for those that are inspecting to that standard. It is a specialized, a lot of additional knowledge that has to come with that inspection process. So there is potentially why we brought this discussion forth too, right? Because of the increased risk, an argument to be made that potentially someone who specializes in those inspections or could provide a specialized inspection, like she had shared related to Gates company that can come and assess that compliance with USP, that would be something that would be very standard and consistently applied. I think in Oregon, we've kind of taken a route of not doing that necessarily, and that is something that we do have support with NABP, that they have a blueprint inspection process. So there are other tools and resources that staff can utilize to do better with inspections for compounding, both sterile and non-sterile. I think where we've been stuck is that we haven't been requiring full USP, or it's been different versions of, or Oregon only. So we've had to do all this extra work to kind of create something, but then take different carve-outs out. And then what does that mean? So I think once if the board chooses to become in alignment with USP, there's a lot of other resources. It will be more easy for staff to utilize to do these inspections.
Yes.
All right, then I feel like we got a lot of good information. We'll work on that and bring some proposals back to the board next board meeting for that discussion. So we'll move now to the next policy discussion. We're going to do these separately, but I have a feeling that maybe it just makes sense to combine both of these discussions of, does the board want to prohibit carpet in the compounding area and animals in the compounding area? So we already did the tee up for this, and I'm just going to go ahead and start with board member. Oh wait, I did want to pause. Smee Gustafson, did you want to give a little bit of information to add on your compounding experience related to these two items that the work group did propose to the board to prohibit?
Sure. One of the reasons why we mentioned carpet was, so I attended all the discussions by the USP committee when they were answering like comments and that kind of thing. The USP committee wanted to full out ban, but they did get some pushback, and that's why they didn't. That being said, 800 and 797 already, even though they don't technically say carpet, they do ban carpet because you can't properly meet all the cleaning requirements needed and the like decontamination with a carpet. My argument for even 795 is there is a cleaning and sanitation requirement of floors daily. I don't really understand how you can possibly fully clean and sanitize a carpet floor. And I don't understand how you wouldn't have particulates and things that could be problematic from like a cross-contamination standpoint. So really with the carpet, it's just, I don't see how you can keep it clean when you have powders and different things or spills or things that could happen with that. And then animals, the reason why we mentioned that is it's currently happening. So yeah, there are animals in compounding areas in our state. So that's why we mentioned that. But again, it's up to you all on kind of what way you want to go with it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Board member Hall, I believe, is starting us off.
Member Hall, yeah, I agree with limiting carpet. And much as we love our pets, I don't think they belong in a compounding area.
Thank you so much. Did you weigh in on carpet too? I apologize. You did. Thank you. Board President Joyce.
President Joyce, yeah, we need to explicitly say carpet, not to have carpet in compounding areas, just for the issues that Sweeney Gustafson brought up. We need to explicitly say that, even though it doesn't say explicitly in the USP. And as far as animals, yeah, of course, you know, I myself love animals, but in compounding areas, no. My concern would be, you know, the airborne allergens that may get into the compounding area. So I'm sorry, no animals, so.
Thank you, Vice President Kirkbride.
I also support prohibition of carpet and animals. I do think it might be challenging for defining the compounding area in a pharmacy, and we don't currently have a rule about animals in pharmacies in general, so we may have to contemplate that a little further. It was interesting to see that statement FDA considers the presence of animals in sanitary, so I think we'll have to be very clear what we mean by compounding area. Thank you.
Board Member Smith?
Board Member Smith, I agree with the prohibition of carpet. I don't know if anyone can think of this, I can't see why an animal should be in the compounding area, and I would agree. Plus there is something that I can't think of right now, and if someone has input on that, that'd be great to hear, but I would agree that that would be unsanitary. Thank you.
Board Member Patel?
Board Member Patel, I am in agreement with the prohibiting carpet and the animal in the compounding area, but then I'm also agree with Board Member Kirkbride said, like, technically we don't have compounding area definition. You know what I mean? So if someone is like having a pharmacy or in the animal in the pharmacy or pharmacy lobby is different than not. The reason is I'm just thinking about all the scenario that not every pharmacy they're doing sterile compounding, right? Like some pharmacy they are just doing like designated compounding area just to do the magic mouthwash for the patient, or just like non-sterile compounding, right? Super quick, like mixing the cream or something like that. So that's the only reason I'm kind of a little bit hesitant and to put this one in our rule that prohibited carpet and animal in the compounding area is just because it's going to be a little dicey. But I agree. And overall, I agree. There shouldn't be a carpet and there shouldn't be animal in the compounding area or compounding facility. Thank you.
You, Board Member Kroger?
Board Member Kruger, generally I agree. However, with the carpeting issue, I think the concern I have is there are many, this is for non-sterile compounding. I think in sterile compounding roads, that's a given. Non-sterile compounding, many retail pharmacies are wall-to-wall carpet, like what we see here today, right? But I do know there are solutions for mats in areas that are able to be sanitized and clean. Now, are we going to prohibit that pharmacy from compounding because they're using a mat to cover their compounding area over the carpet? Are we going to require pharmacies to remove all of that carpet and refloor in order to provide, as Board Member Patel said, some simple compounds, right? I know that word simple compounds doesn't exist anymore for USP, but it used to, whereas, mixing magic mouthwash, 2 creams, very, very simple compounding, that will effectively eliminate it in the state. If we go forward with a full-on carpet ban, if you will, those pharmacies will no longer provide that service. That is 100% what's going to happen, and you can look to our south and what's happened in compounding in California. So I would caution how we prohibit carpeting to make sure that we are doing something that is reasonable and continues to be safe, but does not impact the availability of compounds, simple compounds for patients broadly. So I think that would be my preference, is that we have clarity for the outlets and the pharmacists to understand, can I use a compounding mat and have that area if there's not a separate room or space that's not carpeted?
Thank you. Board Member Chin?
Board Member Chin appreciates that comment about the carpet, and we'd look forward to how we could sort that out in the rule so that there are space is what we're intending, is not to have carpet underneath your feet when you're trying to do any kind of compounding. And And I support no animals, and I even for my magic mouthwash or my patients I'm doing compounded creams for, I don't want animal dander in my compound. And so I don't think animals belong in a pharmacy.
Thank you. Board Member Pinedo?
Board Member Binetto, I support the cleanliness and this sterile areas for sterile compounding, but like other board members have said, I've been in pharmacies where my counter is here and we'll bring in pets into the area, service animals, whatever. If that patient is on hospice and needs their pet there or for whatever reason to support them, and I have to make a magic mouthwash over by that back wall. Yes, there's no carpet. Yes, that area is sterile, but are you excluding the fact? Are we putting a barrier on the patients who are picking up non-sterile compounded products? Is that going to limit accessibility to patients who have legitimate service pets and need to bring them with them?
Thank you. One point I just wanted to clarify, Staff Member Efremoff, if you look at the language, it's for the compounding area that you wouldn't be able to have animals and carpet. So I think back to the discussion here of what is that compounding area really needs to get figured out. But I didn't want to lose sight. I apologize. Board Member Chin, did you have something else you wanted to add?
This Board Member Chin, I was just going to say that this isn't, the dog or the patient isn't allowed in that area either. And so I think that I understand your passion about, I'm not saying no dog or service animal or people who are buried are allowed in the pharmacy.
And that would be a long
space where we do pharmacy work where they're not allowed anyway.
Right? And then the carpet, as Board Member Kroger said, there's a lot of outdated pharmacies due to costs, due to independence, due to all of these things. And coming from a rural area, it's not possible all the time for these pharmacies to make update to be able to serve their patients, to serve the people that are in need. And magic mouthwash is a simple non-sterile compound, but are we limiting that availability to patients in rural areas where their only one pharmacy is 70 miles away, and that pharmacy happens to have a carpet and now cannot make that patient's hospice medication? Or like accessibility, is it going to limit what our pharmacies can provide by having it as a set rule?
Thank you. I think I hear consensus that everyone is generally in acceptance of these prohibitions, but that we need to look into further the consequences of being able to identify what the compounding area is. And if in the situation of a compounding area, if you could put mats on top of a carpet that are cleanable, or how we could maybe put language in to have different criteria that could still meet the intention of sanitary and cleanliness. Yes, Board Member Chen.
Board Member Chen, I would say that would only be allowed in my brain for non-sterile.
Oh, correct. For non-sterile only. I apologize. Yes, that is not just a given. I hear you. You need to be explicit with what I mean. Thank you. Yes. Is that the general consensus?
It's definitely tweak the language.
Okay, great. We will do that and bring that back in February then. So we will move to the next section then. So we're going to pick up some momentum shortly here. So for 855-183-0205, we propose to strike this section. Similar to the previous section, direction was to keep USP only. This is an additional parameter. Paren 1 and 2 are mays and are not requirements. If the board would like to articulate these thoughts via formal communication, that is not via rules, perhaps as a board memo, we could discuss that further at another time. And for the last board discussion, it appears that paren 3, 4, 5, and 6 related ACDs would need to be struck, and the expectation is that these machines would be used accurately and in compliance with USP if you're requiring USP. Any discussion on striking this section in its entirety? All right, we will move on to the next section. Second to last policy discussion. So this is labeling. We had struck through the compounding non-sterile preparations, and it's probably going to be most effective if we could discuss all three labeling sections together as one, because we're really looking at labeling as one thing. The board had previously decided or asked if we could do just follow USP and or if you can condense into one section labeling so that it's not so duplicative. So we assessed the sections and we proposed that it maybe would be better for clarity to have something articulated here related to the preparation versus the dispensing component. So I'll just read the language and then we can do a round robin. Paren 1, labeling requirements for preparation of a compounded product must follow USP 795 and 797. Labeling requirements for dispensing a compounded product must follow OAR 855, 41, 43, and 139. The drug outlet must maintain policy and procedures in compliance with all labeling requirements referenced in this rule. So I'll open it up. We could do a round robin for this also if Board President Joyce would like to start this discussion.
I don't necessarily have anything specific to add to this section. I just otherwise, other than USP 797, the date might need to be updated next time we meet.
Yes.
Or,
Yeah.
the next time we meet.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Vice President Kirkbride? Yes, we do.
I took some notes
800.
during your presentation regarding the shoulds. So I think the real question here is, what about the shoulds in USP? So route, the fact that it's compounded, any special handling and warnings, and then the compounding facility info. So to me, route is handled pretty well. We do require that directions for the patient be on the medication, and to me, that's inclusive of route. We don't explicitly say route, but when I think in my head, is there any inherent additional risk to a compounded medication not having the route on it versus a commercially available medication not having the route on it? Because right now we don't say route is required. I don't know that risk is there, so I'm okay with that. We do mention route in the institution labeling requirements. And then we do talk about auxiliary labels in both of our labeling rules that exist already. And so I think that pretty much covers special handling and warning. So really what we're missing in my mind is the fact that it is compounded and then the information of the facility. So for me, it kind of comes down to, do I want to explicitly add those things back in? And that's something I would have to think about. I'm very cognizant of space on a label and how many things we can fit on a label. And especially when you're talking about information about a facility, that takes up a lot of space. And there are other, paperwork pamphlets that come with a prescription aside from the label. So I'd have to think about that. In general, I'm okay with how it reads, but I'll think some more on the shoulds as far as the item is a compounded item and the facility info.
Thank you. And each staff member Aftermath wanted to make one clarification too, because they are slightly different for 795 and 797. And that when it's going to a patient, it would have the requirement of the facility information. So the patient could reach out to the pharmacist. This would be the internal use, and there likely is an argument to be made if this really might be needed, depending on the situations. Board Member Smith.
Member Smith, I really like this. It's wide, it's a big umbrella that I think a lot of things fit under. And I really like this. This makes it easier to understand. It references, I think it eliminates some of the duplicitousness that we had previously. So I like this update, and I have no other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Patel.
Board Member Patel, no further comments, but I'm more in agreement with Board Member Kirkbride.
Thank you. Board Member Kroger.
Board Member Kroger, I think this is sufficient as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Chin.
Board Member Chin has nothing to add. Thank you.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Oh, Board Member Pineda, thank you. Sorry. Board Member Hall?
Overall, nothing to add, regarding what, Board Member Kirkbride mentioned. Just, I think, trying to think of a scenario where a compound would be made. Labeling requirements. For preparation of a compounded products. The facility name. Being able to identify that it was made in-house. I feel like that should be obvious, but there might be a situation where that's not the case, but I'm fine with what's here right now.
Thank you. Oh, nope. Did we go Board President Joyce?
No, I started first, but
Oh, okay.
the labeling standards in USP are based on the patient safety labeling standards, what is that advisory group for patient labeling safety standards. Yeah, there's one
Okay.
that we use. Anyways, I'll have to look into it, but this encompasses both 797 and 795 labeling requirements. Yeah, I'm good with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Staff Member Efremov. I think we have what we need. It sounds like you all just need maybe some time to look at this, digest it, look at the different lens of what the different scenarios are with a compounded product, and if those, looking at it as those shoulds are not requirements. So if somebody was to not use those at all, would you be okay with that and comfortable of following just the 797, 795 musts? And what, I know I don't know what that hum is, what the Division 41 and 43 requirements would get you where you think you need to be for patient safety. I was yelling. Okay, that was loud. Thank you. Feel better. I'm like, was I yelling? It felt like I was yelling. For those on the call, I'm sorry. There's a very loud hum in the background here. All right, so we will move on to the next section then. There's going to be we're going to get some serious momentum here. So we're going to strike through those 3 sections of labeling because we just talked about those all simultaneously. So proposing to strike those and just have the one section we discussed. Yep, sorry. So we should be now, thank you, at 855-183-050 disposal. We propose to strike this because this is covered in USP 800. Any comments or questions on that? All right, moving to the next section, policy and procedures. All items listed here either have been accounted for in USP or have been accounted for in the general requirements. So we pulled what we needed out of here, took it up into general. So for that reason, we would propose to strike this whole section also. We did a cross-by-cross analysis of all of USP and the different line items here, and they have been accounted for. Any discussion on this topic?
And Board Member Patel, please just speak up because we
Yes,
can't see your
sorry.
hand. Sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
I will, Rachel. Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next section, recalls. 855-183-520-0520. We also propose to strike this section. Little history of this. This was created due to some other states having very specific requirements for compounded medications specifically. This language began more in alignment with California's language, and then through some working together with the work group and others, tried to kind of get it to be less robust, but more clear and direct. And unfortunately, where it landed, it's just not very clear. And it's actually more confusing than even USP is. So at this time, staff would recommend removing this section. USP really does have good requirements required to creating recalls, ensuring that they're addressing appropriate situations, addressing patient complaints. If someone doesn't have an appropriate response to certain things, that you still have the ability to address that with the requirements of USP. So I'll just open this up for questions. If anybody would like to discuss not striking this, if you have any concerns about striking this. All right, moving on to the next section, records, general requirements, 855-183-0550. In reviewing USP, it appears that all the parameters listed here also are already required to be documented. So we would propose to strike this section since we already added up in general requirements the other specificity that we have in our regulations. And I will pause to open up for any questions or discussion on this section. Okay, move on to the next section. Oops, I think I'm going too fast here. All right, master formulation records, 855-183-0560. Again, reviewing USP, it appears all the listed parameters here are required to be documented in USP. So I will open it up. We're proposing to strike this. I'll open up for board members to have any discussion on this section.
Board President
Please
Joyce,
do.
no, I appreciate this because it's duplicative of what's already in USP. There's not much mention of USP 800 in this section, is there? I mean, because it's just not relevant, is that?
So staff member from so when we look at USP 800, there's not necessarily, it's talking about dealing with the hazardous materials. So it's kind of a different lens than when creating the master formula.
Okay.
Do you want to add? Sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding the question to Board Member Kroger.
Board Member Kroger, I was just gonna say USP 800 applies to both compounded and non-compounded products. It's just anything hazardous.
Hazardous.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be called out here because it's kind of overarching umbrella. That's how I view it.
Good description. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we're on 855-183-0565. Perfect. So we also propose to strike this section for the same reason. Any discussion? Right, moving on to the next section. 855-183-0570. Again, it appears when looking at USP that all of these parameters are already accounted for there, except for the one that we addressed regarding scope and verification that was pulled up into the general requirements. So we propose to go ahead and strike this whole section now. Any discussion on this? All right, moving on to the next one. This is records, compounding records for CSPs. Yep, okay, 855-183-0575. Same assessment. Proposing to strike. Any discussion?
Board President Joyce, yeah, it seems like with sections of these stricken rules proposals, were they copy and pasted from USP? It just seems duplicative, and I'm glad we're striking it. There's some, yeah, just a statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Next section would be 855-183-0600 prohibited practices, which we folded into the general requirements. So we would propose to strike this section because it is accounted for in another section, not to delete completely. Any discussion about that? All right, next section would be 855-183-0700 preparation according to FDA labeling. Again, we incorporated what is not compounding up in the applicability section. So we propose to strike this because it is added in another section, not because we are deleting it. Any discussion on that section? All right, this will bring us to the next or last policy discussion. So we're looking at 855-183-0730. This is service for use by a veterinarian. We already discussed the need for this. I would really just open it up. So we did rework the language from the last time you saw this. So this is same content, just reworked completely. So I'll read it real quick just to make sure it makes sense. Compounding for a veterinarian, non-food producing animals, Paren 1. A patient-specific prescription is not required to compound drugs for a licensed veterinarian when A, the request for a drug compounding is submitted by a licensed veterinarian, and B, the compounded drug will only be dispensed for use for non-food producing animals, and Paren 2, the drugs compounded in accordance with Section 1 of this rule can only be delivered directly to the licensed veterinarian or their office. So with that, we will start the round robin with, I believe it's Vice President Kirkbride.
I don't have any additional comments. The language seems clear. And, based on the conversation earlier, I think this suffices for the purposes in this rule set. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Smith.
No further comments at this time.
Thank you. Board Member Patel.
Board Member Patel, just a clarification. I know in our current rule, you have to have patient-specific prescription, even though it's come from the compounding um, is a compounding product from the veterinarian office. So you're saying this has happened all the time. So let's say there is a cat and they have like 10 kittens, right? And sometimes they give the antibiotic prescription, and sometimes like you can't have like kitten 1, kitten 2, kitten 3, right? So you are saying that we can make in bulk and give it to veterinarian? According to number 1A, like a patient-specific prescription is not required to compound drug for a licensed veterinarian. Yeah, that's the one. Thanks.
Staff member Efroff, yes, I think, so I think the criteria that was, or the situations that were specified to staff from the veterinarians and the association was more of that there's not necessarily a lot of FDA approved drugs that they could have in office to be able to utilize on staff also, or for animals when they come in. So having something too, that if it's a product that could be compounded, that they could use in anticipation of, for potentially taking out in the field. If someone has a pet cow and they need to use this drug in the field, they didn't know that they were going to see that cow that day, working in emergency services. There's a lot of different scenarios potentially. And you might have saw the NABP language, which is a bit more specific and restrictive in allowing it for only certain hour amount times, because there is risk within doing this. We do know that there have been, circumstances where potentially maybe you want to make sure there's no cross-contamination in these situations, or not using the BUD to the correct date. So when it's not patient-specific, other risks can happen. And that was why keeping it with a licensed veterinarian, who is the one who is receiving it at their office, they are the one requesting it. Hopefully that will limit the risk that might be there.
Perfect. No, that is really, really helpful actually. But the only one thing we have to do a little bit wordsmithing on the 2, because it says the drug compounded in accordance with section 1 of this rule can only be delivered directly to the licensed veterinarian or their office. Anyone can pick up, right? If someone from their office also can pick up, like, you know what I mean?
Yep, point noted. We can look into that a little further, like the veterinarian's agent, and they could pick it up instead of being it delivered. Like, I hear what you're saying, that could be perceived as limiting.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. No, but other than that, that's a thank you for adding that number 1. Definitely everyone appreciate in our area, like especially the veterinarian office. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger, no further comments.
Thank you. Board Member Chin?
No further comments.
Board Member Pinedo?
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Board Member Hall?
Member Hall has nothing to add.
Thank you. And Board President Joyce?
Okay, guys. Yeah, this is clear. Leave it for the veterinarians. Thank you.
Great. All right. I think we got clear direction that we're pretty much on track, but we will relook at number 2 to make sure that there's no unintended consequences or limitation in that language the way we have written it. All right, we are going to move down to the next section. So we finished all of 183. So division 6 here is just adopting, actually keeping what was proposed there. There's no changes since you've seen it. This is the compounding definition from USP. And as we discussed, since this is going to be over multiple divisions, potentially diptos, others, this would need to be in division 6 so that everyone would know this relates to them. Any questions or discussion for the division 6 language? All right, hearing none, we will go down to division 41, and I'm going to kind of clump 41 and 43 together, if you don't mind kind of scrolling, Rachel. The only changes here, nothing has been done since you've seen it last. It's just changing division 45 to 183. So anticipation, everything in alignment to have the all of division 41 for pharmacies and division 43 for the practitioner dispensing in alignment. I'll just give her a moment to be able to scroll through that so you can see the language. Yep, it's not changed since you've seen it last. If there's any questions or discussion on any of those, there's quite a few of them to scroll through. We'll just pause for a moment. And then our proposal is just to strike all of Division 45 when,
Repeal.
if in repeal, thank you, Division 45, if and when you do adopt 183. So that is why all of that language is there. So with that, we've completed the review of compounding. Thank you so much. At this time, I do want to make sure that we have board direction. I do apologize. It was kind of a last minute. I'm glad we looked at the updates for USP. At this time, we would recommend revisiting this in February, and we will bring forth the USP 797 changes that are coming forth to see, we'll assess them and give you a report on that, and 825 to give you an update on where we're at with that. So we will bring this back in February if that is okay with the board. Seeing lots of head nodding for those on the phone. If anyone opposes or has other ideas, maybe speak forth.
I just have a question. At what point will we be soliciting feedback from the public
And that is,
outside of rulemaking?
and that is a good discussion for all of the board to have at this time. If you would like to do different forms of communication or how you would like to communicate questions or feedback, or if you do want to just go to formal rulemaking, that is a discussion you can have now, or you could think about and have in February.
It's for personal choice. Let me just get some opinions based on that. I'm not a fan necessarily, sorry, of sending it back out again. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, but go ahead, board member, right?
Oh, I just wanted to hear a quick recap from board member Kroger, what her idea might be, because I'm having a hard time visualizing what feedback outside of rulemaking might look like, or what that benefit might be, or what the risk without it might be.
Well, I think at this point, there's been the exercise we just went through. The 8 of us here gave our opinions, but I only know what I know. I don't know everything about compounding. I'd like to hear from the vet groups. I'd like to get something in writing from them about like, yes, this is what we were envisioning, or no, we're concerned about, kind of what maybe board member Patel brought up. There could be other aspects to within the rule that we may not have identified as being a concern, or maybe even getting feedback on the notifying the board about compounding within 10 days or 15 days or not at all, or what have you. Outside of rulemaking, to me, there's, I think, number of paths, or we can ask for informal comments from the public in the same manner as rulemaking. I think board counsel said that that's appropriate for us to do. We can notice that it's just not within the formal structure of rulemaking, where we are limited to whatever time frame and have to have the formal rulemaking hearing. So
when you get the comments back.
Microphone, please. Thank you.
When you get the comments back, you can't change, you can change it, but it's like, it's limiting. So I think if you guys want us to look at other feedback, then we would need to do that.
because I think ultimately before this gets sent to formal rulemaking, I want to make sure that there has been ample opportunity for the public to weigh in so that we don't get stuck in a situation where we feel like we have to vote it down because there was something substantial that we did not collectively come up with.
Smith, did you anyone comment? Board member Kirkendike? Or Smith, David?
Board member Smith. I know I'm relatively new to the, being on the board in this process. I feel like this is, how long, how many years has this been?
Yeah, to that 2022,
Okay.
I believe it started.
I think I'll pass on comment just because I'm pretty new to this, and I can see where board member Kroger's going from. I kind of see both points of view. But I'm not sure what would be best for getting this done. As I think as soon as we can is good, but I think we also should be careful, and I don't really know. So I'll just pass. Thank you.
Look forward, Chen.
Richard.
Okay. Board Patel, did you have any comment on time frame or sending it back up?
Board Member Patel, I'm 100% agree with Board Member Kroger. We definitely have to hear from public. Yes, we did got the public comment in 2023, 2022. We didn't even discuss, and we just sent out the public comment. So I don't know about the time frame, but it's just not only impacting the compounding pharmacy, right? It's also going to impact a hospital, the smaller hospitals, who is doing sterile, non-sterile compounding. It's also going to be affect the veterinarians. It's also going to be affect the dispensing practitioner drug outlet, right? So I mean, this is a whole section. We are making the rulemaking and the USP standard and everything. So I don't know about the timeline. I don't know how we are going to do it, and that's what we asked last time DOJ Hunt, that how can we do that, getting comments outside of the rulemaking. But that's the concern I have. Like about 3 years ago, that's what I just say. If we want to do it right, we have to do it right way to get it this section get it right. So I would say definitely we have to hear from the public who is doing this for daily basis and they are expert.
Staff member Efimoff, can I just make one point of clarification? Just for those that might be on the public, these will always go out for public comment. Rules
They
will
have
never be
to,
adopted before
legally.
they go out legally to a formal rulemaking. What is being contemplated is additional public feedback. And please note that all of the feedback the public has been provided has been reviewed by the board and determination was made upon and how to rule on that. It might not be this board that we're seeing today, but when the public comment was provided, that board did review it and that board did make adjustments related to those public comments. Thank you. Sorry, board member Kirkbride. Or Kroger.
Sorry,
oh my gosh,
I just want to
interested in
add,
too.
I just want to add that one. Yes, you are right. But then that time, you remember the USP there in the guidance, it was not on the, it was not even finalized. Now it's finalized.
That is true.
Member Kroger, I was just gonna say, I think what I would envision for this particular process, to kind of go back to what board member Kirkbride asked, is a notice to the licensees like we do in formal rulemaking, but asking for informal feedback before the next meeting. I think we talked about this coming back to us. What's gonna be different between now and then if we don't get feedback? You know, that can still be whatever time frame we want, give them 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever, you know, before the next meeting, can be part of the board packet for us to review as we go into the next discussion in February. So we need to do anything fancy.
Staff member Efimoff, can I make one point though too? So the staff resources and time and holidays coming up, we probably would not be able to put out prior to and get back if we allowed forward. So just to know, like, you wouldn't be able to get it back. If you want, I don't want that to be a rate limiting, like use the time you would like to use for something, but then it might not be able to come back to the February, because at best, I'm thinking probably after the new year would be when we could get out with the amount of staff we have out at the time. And if we are going to go this route, we would need to just make sure it's very specific, which we're happy to do, on asking for feedback, and also know that it would be the language that you have currently, which you want to change though. So you're going to be getting feedback on language that you are talking about changing right now. So maybe this is even better waiting until February when those changes are implemented and then doing this process. Or if you want to do this process, maybe it's good to have that time to think about. I do not want to curb, yes, we need updates, but is a couple months really going to make a change? If you can get better feedback to be able to make those decisions, then you won't have to reissue a whole formal process, to the point of when something is a substantial change, then you have to restart the whole process of formal rulemaking. So I totally hear the pros and cons of everything and hope that that's clear to everybody too. And when you're making this assessment, I did want to apologize too. We do have our SME that needs to get off. She's been kind enough on vacation to join us. So I don't know if Natalie is still here, but just wanted to give a huge thank you to Natalie Gustafson for all of her expert information, being here for the board and supporting this whole process and supporting our state. Thank you, Natalie.
For sure, no problem.
Sorry, back to board president. I apologize.
No, did you want opinion? Okay, Councilmember Chen.
I definitely understand that we want to have feedback before we do a formal rule hearing, because we can't make any substantial changes, but that created, I don't know how you do it, so it's not a formal process, and you still get, and it's still within the legal framework where we can accept those comments and make changes, because I know that there's some rules about all of that.
So there, once you vote to initiate rulemaking, right, all those other requirements kick in, right? So there's still, so I think it's just maybe easier to give an example. So Board of Accountancy does this, right? Like, so they just did a whole event of all their rules. And so they did that, wrote them all through, they got them all written, just kind of like how you guys are doing it today. And then they do it through a town hall, which I'm not suggesting you guys do, but they do it through a town hall where they usually like have a town hall and they invite everybody to come and they can all comment, and they actually do it a lot like verbally, writing and verbal. And then after that, they take the feedback that they get in that situation, they have a board meeting and they say, do we want to implement any of the changes that were discussed? This last time, there was like no, even though we revamped every single rule, there was hardly any feedback that we got that was like wanted anything changed, so they voted to initiate rulemaking. Then with that meeting, so then it goes out, the notice of intent to do rulemaking happen. You can still, there's still at that point, right? There's still the whole rulemaking process and the comments that come in through that, and then you vote to adopt them finally. So that is just an example of how one place does it. Some boards don't do it at all. Like some boards, do it as an email. They'll be like, hey, we're contemplating updating these rules, give feedback on what you think would work now, right? On this.
And are we allowed to do that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So blanket.
Staff Member Rock, we most certainly can do that. I think part of the discussion was, and I think if you remember back in August, Board Member Kroger had brought forth what California did on some special things. Sorry, it's been a long day. Had brought forth that the way California wanted specific input on a certain thing, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So they had asked people to even fill out in a certain form, like, here's our question, and we need you to put your name, like your thought, like teeing it up in a fillable format that we could elicit that communication. There are issues that, of course, people are not required to use it in that, and we would need to collate that information and give that back to the board and process it. But I think we most certainly could do all of these. We just need to make sure that we have clear direction from the board on what you want communicated. So we would need to know, who are we including in the listserv? What is the exact language questions you have at this time? Like, we would need to talk about that before we would do that. And then we could, it's like everything, a check and adjust, right? Well, we can do it and then we can learn from the hiccups and do it better the next time, or do it differently. And maybe some rules require this and other rules don't require this. So I think it's that kind of conversation. There are so many different options that we have.
You, Staff Member Melvin, as the rules coordinator for our agency, you hit most of those, but yes, if we're going to do this just for these rules, we have to be very specific on how we're doing this. Are we taking written mail, emails? If there's going to be a form on the website, yes, this will take a couple, that's 2 months of work when I'm looking at this. Do you run this at the same time we're getting ready to notice rulemaking for your other sets of rules? What we don't want to do is confuse people on our website where we're accepting it just on this section and not this section. That's problematic. Just throwing that out there. Thank you.
I'm not concerned with the timeline and working this out, because I'd rather get this done right than and have the feedback and have the rules in a place that we're not going to have a moment where we're getting feedback and then we're stuck in a formal rulemaking. So I'm not afraid of a longer time frame. I get that we want to get these rules done, but I want them to be right. I see this happen too often in other states where here where rules are written and now they're going through and they're doing it all over again because they didn't get the feedback that they needed in the first place. And we have taken too long on these rules, and there has been so many adjustments. It would be really great to get feedback that says, yes, great job, kudos, you guys did it, you finally made it. Because I'm sure there might be some letters, however we receive the format. So I was just asking if there was a timeline on when we would do that, if we want to wait till the February meeting to hash out all of those questions that Staff Member Melvin has, that's fine. To me, there's not necessarily a rush to getting it done right. So that's my thought. Sorry, I keep kind of jumping in because.
Pinedo. Pinedo.
Board Member Pinedo, I think the more public opinion we have on everything, because it is in fact licensees who are the ones that are doing the work. Any feedback that we can get from our licensees and the public regarding anything that we're doing is very appreciated. What I have seen in my short time here is we request and we want all of this public, and we want them to make statements, and more often than not, we get no comments until it's done, and then it's you did it wrong. So I'm kind of torn between, you know, we need to get this done and yeah, let's wait for the licensees. Let's wait for anybody and everybody who wants to have feedback to give us the feedback that we want. But more often than not, we get no feedback until after it's done, and then it's negative impact on what we didn't do right versus you have the time to stand up and say something and you don't.
Hall.
Member Hall, I echo what Board Member Kroger has said. We want to increase engagement and belonging with our licensees. If it takes a little bit longer, then that's what we need to do. We want more feedback. Maybe we're not asking the right way. We're not giving the public enough time. So maybe let's try something different.
Right now, they're over.
Oh.
It's just if you need to.
Oh, yeah. As Board President Joyce, yeah, I'm just seeing it from I strongly appreciate the opinions and they're all valid. I'm just seeing this as, you know, we've started off with a work group that met several times. We've sent it out to the public. We've seen the public comments and external communications on our iPads. We've met several times as a board discussing compounding several times and seeing the progression from when it started back in 2023 to what it is now. It's a dramatic improvement. The stuff that's been eliminated and tweaked, and this has been a process for 2 years, which has included public comments several times, which has, again, the feedback from the SMEs. So literally at this meeting, I was seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And I thought maybe February we could finish everything up. So I'm not sure. I know, I understand that they need to fine tune a few things, hear out a few, hear from a few groups. But there is a lot of information already that's been provided, and we've already met several times. So that's just the perspective I'm seeing, especially having been here throughout this whole process. So thank you. Board Member Kirkbride.
Board Member Kirkbride, yeah, now that I've heard a little bit more about this, I think it's a good question to contemplate. I think we should not do this until we have final language. So I think this is something we talk about in February. We're very close. We have these final comments that we made today. We're gonna get these back in February, and then I think we have this conversation. It's encouraging to hear that as long as we do it before we initiate rulemaking, we can actually make changes. So that's encouraging. I think it's a good conversation to have, but we're not gonna do it now. So I think we see this again in February and then have that conversation. There will be some timeline impact for sure. And so we'll have to look at that and kind of weigh those options and decide as a group, but thank you.
I think now is a good time to break and for 10 minutes. And we'll start back up with SDA conversation when we come back. Break until 2:48.
Sorry,
What?
staff member, I just want to make sure we have clear direction. So
Sorry.
clear direction is staff will go back and make the changes as directed by the board, and we will bring that back to February. Then at February, the board will review it and you will revisit this discussion on how to elicit public feedback for these roles. Is that correct? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Let's break. Does anybody need 15 minutes or is 10 minutes okay? 10 minutes, okay. So it is 2:33. Let's come back here at 2:43.
He said 2:43. 2:43.